Hey, what's going on everyone? This is Big Brace channel. My name is Amir, and before we dive into today's video, I just want to say a huge thank you for all of your support throughout 2024. This is the last video of the year, and I want to wish every one of you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. May 2025 bring you all the best, guys. Alright, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and start our video tutorial. In today's video, we're going to build a fully functional server render to-do application using HTMX and FastAPI. So first of all, FastAPI. I have a crash course, I have a full course on FastAPI as well. I have a lot of tutorials. I have the Fullstack course also featuring FastAPI on the channel. So make sure to check all of those videos out. But if you know what FastAPI is, then you don't need to do that. For anyone else who doesn't know what FastAPI is, it's simply a modern Python web framework that's known for its high performance, its simplicity, its speed. Speed is very important. That's called FastAPI for a reason, right? And also support for asynchronous programming. It can allow you to quickly build APIs with minimal code, and that's a very big feature of FastAPI. Also, it includes automatic documentation generation using OpenAPI, and I'm pretty sure if you have seen any FastAPI tutorial ever, you know, of course, the Swagger page and the automatic documentation generation with OpenAPI. On the other hand, we have HTMX. HTMX is a lightweight JavaScript library that lets you build dynamic front ends without writing any JavaScript code ever. HTMX works using special attributes in your HTML called hyperscript attributes. And these attributes actually allow you to make HTTP requests, allows you to make AJAX requests as well. So let me give you an example. Here at the bottom, you can see this code snippet. So let me just open the magnify to show you better. So you see here, this right here, hx-post clicked, all right? This here, let's say that you have this button, right, with this hx-post attribute. This basically can send a post request to an endpoint without any extra JavaScript code. Pretty sweet, right? And the HTMX also supports all of the HTTP methods, not only post, but get, put, patch, and delete. So instead of being limited to just get and post and delete eventually, patch is very rare. I don't use patch, to be honest. Instead of using only get and post for forms, as is the case with any traditional HTML script, you can fully leverage the other methods as well, which is very handy and very big feature of HTMX. So you see, those attributes are very helpful, and they are just embedded in your HTML elements. So it's an attribute called hxpost. You have hxswap as well for outer HTML. So with attributes like hxswap, you can swap out content dynamically. For instance, if a button triggers a request and the server responds with some data, HTMX can instantly replace that button with the response content, whatever the content is, all without reloading the page. So you don't have to reload the page, which is very efficient for your front end, for your user interface. So yeah, these are some of the features of HTMX and using HTMX. So HTMX is perfect for full stack applications, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So whether you want to fetch data, you want to submit forms, you want to update some parts of the page without reloading the whole page, as I said, HTMX actually is going to be perfect for this. All right, guys, I hope you're excited. So as I said, HTMX is a lightweight JavaScript library. So you will need to install it using NPM. So make sure you have Node installed with NPM. So let me check my Node version. I have 19.3.0. Also NPM, we have 9.2.0. All right, that's pretty sweet. That's enough to install HTMX as using the Node package manager. All right, so to install HTMX, you need to go to docs on HTMX website and just scroll down until, or simply I can do npm like that, and there we go. So that's the part where it tells you that you need to install HTMX using npm install htmx.org at 2.0.4 for the specific or targeting the specific version of HTMX. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'm going to take this, Control C to copy, Control V to paste, and hit enter. There we go, up to date, audited 2 packages in whatever found 0 vulnerabilities. So what you're actually going to learn in this tutorial is, first of all, how to set up a FastAPI project with Jinja 2 template language. That's the same template language with Flask, which is very similar to the Django template language as well. Also, how to create interactive server rendered components with HTMX. We're going to see that in details. And finally, how to implement a CRUD, which stands for create, read, update, and delete, which is the basic functionalities of any application. Really, how to add, read, update, or modify and delete in the posts or in the messages or in the database or whatever. I know to-do list is kind of boring for most of us, but that's a great way to learn how things work, especially if we're going to create this kind of a full stack app using HTMX and FastAPI. And it's always good to have this to-do app kind of application or template application or standard application, I would say, for any new technology that we want to discover or explore. And by the way, this tutorial is perfect for beginners and intermediate developers who just want to explore the power of FastAPI combined with HTMX for dynamic web applications. Thanks so much, guys, and I will see you in the next part where we're going to start coding our HTMX FastAPI to-do list application. I'll see you shortly. Alright guys, so the first thing that we will need to make sure of is that we have FastAPI installed. So first of all, let's just check our Python version. So to make sure that you have Python installed, that's good. If you want to install FastAPI, obviously you will need to go to the website. I will leave the link in the description, you can check it out later. Now they have a very cool CLI tool, or you know, when you run the server, you have the CLI running. So let me just show you, it's down here. That's the one. When you will run the server using FastAPI dev main.py, you have this development FastAPI CLI in the development mode, and yeah, it's going to watch over any changes that you would do and apply them immediately. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Let me copy this. If you're going to type, be sure to put FastAPI standard between quotes. That's very important in order to make sure that's going to work in all terminals. I'm in my PowerShell, so I'm going to do here. Wait, hold on. Let's just shut. Before I do that, I want to show you if you want to check out if you have FastAPI already installed or not. The way to do that is by typing pip show FastAPI. All right, I don't have it. If I would do pip show Django, for example, I know that I have Django. So you'll have something like this: the name, the version, the summary, the author, and so on. All right, so let me get back to the FastAPI website, copy this, paste it here, and do pip install FastAPI standard. Awesome. Now, if I would do pip show FastAPI, I should get the name, the version, the summary, and so on. And that tells me that indeed FastAPI is properly installed on my machine. Awesome. So yeah, with that, we are ready to start coding our application. So let me go to my folder and let me create a folder, and I'm gonna call it FastAPI HTMX. Let's cd to that. And also I want to create a file. I'm gonna call it main.py. All right, sweet. And then I'm going to open the current directory with Visual Studio Code using the command code space dot. That's going to open Visual Studio Code. for our current folder, and you can see that I have an empty main.py file. Now let's go ahead and start coding. So the first thing that I want to make is to import some packages. Always in Python and any programming language in general, you would do is to import the packages and the dependencies for your application. So I want to import from FastAPI. I want to get FastAPI, and that's not here. Okay, FastAPI like that. I need also the request. I need also header and form. So these are the FastAPI core imports. Before we get going, one very important thing that I've overlooked, and you shouldn't actually, is to create a virtual environment for your application. So you can use VNV, Poetry. I always use pipenv. So I would do pipenv shell. If you don't have it, you can install it via pip install pipenv. All right, but as I have it already, so I'm going to activate the virtual environment using pipenv shell. That's going to isolate your application from the global file system. So any dependencies or packages that you want to install are going to be installed only in that application. So this command that I've just used to install FastAPI in the global file system, I can also use it inside my application, inside my virtual environment. And instead of using pip, I'm going to use pipenv. So pipenv install FastAPI. So FastAPI is going to only be installed in my application. Of course, I've installed it in the global file system. That's fine. I like, for the most part, those Python frameworks. I like to install them in my global file system, like Django, like FastAPI. So yeah, it's not a big deal. And now you can check out. If you see here, you'll find that you have pip file. You will see here that we have the Python version and you have the FastAPI. And for the version, you have here the asterisk. I suppose that's, the standard version. All right. You don't have to worry about those. And yeah, we're good to go. Let's go ahead and continue our imports. So also from FastAPI.responses, I need to import HTML response. So I don't find it here. So that's HTML response and also JSON response. And those mainly are the responses for HTML and JSON. Also from FastAPI.static files, I want to import static files. This is to serve static files, obviously. So that's another import. Another very important import is the Jinja2 templates to render HTML page on the browser. So that's going to be from FastAPI.templating. I want to import Jinja2 templates. The last FastAPI import that I want is to convert objects to JSON compatible formats. And that's a package called JSONable encoder. So I want this from the FastAPI.encoders. And from here, I'm going to import JSONable encoder. Awesome. So these are the FastAPI imports. Also, I need a few other imports. The first one to create unique IDs for the to-dos, and that's of course from the UUID. I want to import not UUID, but UUID4. I believe some of you guys know that. That's to generate those IDs for each to-do or each task in our to-dos list. And finally, I want to import annotated and union, and this is for type annotation. So from typing, I want to import annotated and union. And that's basically it. This is all of the imports that we need for our application. Next thing that I want to do is to initialize a FastAPI application by instantiating the FastAPI and creating the app object. So that's the first thing. The next thing that you would want to do is to configure the templates directory for Jinja 2. So configuring templates directory for Jinja 2. So let me declare a variable called templates, and templates here equal to Jinja 2 templates. And inside here, I want the directory, and I'm going to set it to templates. All right, this is to configure the templates directory for our Jinja 2 template language. Let me show you in the website here if we can take, let me just take that app decorator, those two app decorators, one for get for the empty route, for the, the default route to return hello world, and another one items ID, and will return a JSON item ID, whether with whatever the item ID is, and the queue, which is whatever the query is. All right, so let me just copy that. And let's paste that in, and let's try to run that server using this command right here, FastAPI dev main.py. And before running the server, let's just get to the bottom here to start the FastAPI development server. So start the dev server for CLI use. If name is equal to main, I want, by the way, to import the UVcorn. And that's the uvcorn.run, and let's do main app, and let's put this in double quotes. So main is set to the main application. The host is 120, that's the local host, that's fine. Port 8000, and also let's set reload to true for debugging mode. The usual problem that I always do, guys, don't do that silly mistake, FastAPI like that, API capitalized. And also make sure to comment this line out. So now you can get back to the website, take that command, FastAPI dev main.py, paste that in, hit enter, and everything should work. Awesome. All right, so if you will check out your server, you should see hello world. Awesome. And you can check out also if you want to query something, you should also see that here, item ID 5 query and so on. Quantity needed, hit enter, you'll see here quantity needed. And instead of 5, you can do 2, for example. So the item ID is 2, and Q, which stands for query, that's the quantity needed, or whatever you want to write. All right, so yeah, everything is working fine. That's just a sanity test. I'm going to delete or comment all of those lines out. And let's uncomment those lines out again. And from FastAPI, this also, I don't need that anymore. All right, sweet. So what I want to do next is I want to create a model, a to-do model that's going to store all of the to-do items. So that's going to be a to-do model. I'm going to create that using a class. So I'm going to create a to-do class, or I like to make all of my classes in capitalized letters, but you're free to do whatever you want. That's just by convention or by habit. So what I want to do now is to create my init method. And that's a little bit of object-oriented programming. And the text here, I'm going to set it to be a string. Then the self.id is equal to UUDI4. This is to generate a unique ID, as I said, and also self.text equal to text. That's going to be the to-do content. Also the completion status, by default, I'm going to set it to false. So self.done is equal to false, a Boolean value of false. Next, I want to have the in-memory storage for the to-dos, and that's going to be initially an empty list. Let me just get above here and put my first decorator. So that's going to be a get, the same exactly like we have done in the demo. So on an empty route, I want to have the response class. Response class is equal to the HTML response. And I want to create an asynchronous function that's going to be the index function, and I'm going to set the request to be set to the request itself, and I want to return templates.template response, and here the request is going to be set to request, and the name of that template is also index.html. And what I want to do now, and I hope you are coding this with me now, not only watching. So in your current folder, I want you to create another folder, and I'm gonna call it templates. Inside that templates folder, I want to create a file called index.html. And for now, you can keep it simple. You can have a paragraph with hello world text. All right, so go ahead and open your terminal, do FastAPI dev main.py. Hopefully we will not have any errors, and of course we should have errors. All right, FastAPI encoders, no, that's FastAPI encoder, not encoders. Right, sweet. Let's try that one more time. Nice, so we didn't have any errors. If you will run here, you will have your hello world, which is essentially the page that we have written, the HTML page, the index.html that we have written. Awesome, so rendering is working perfectly fine. And yeah, we can move on. We can actually create another decorator, app.get, because we need to get all of the to-dos. So / to-dos class here is equal to HTML response. Right, and that's also going to be an asynchronous function, and I'm gonna call this function list to-dos, and the request here is set to the request itself. So what I want to return here is a JSON response. We're going to fall back to JSON response of the to-dos, of course. So we're going to use the JSONable encoder. So return, and I'm going to take that JSON response method, and we don't need that actually. I need here the content, and the content here is going to be set to the JSONable encoder method, and inside the JSONable encoder, I'm going to pass the to-dos list. So let's actually try that out. If I will go to my to-dos list, and that's going to be the ID, that's going to be a unique ID number, and the text, whatever the text is just test, and done as a default is going to be false, right? And as I'm working on Microsoft Windows, I don't have the ability to use curl, but there is a way around using git bash, and you can actually download it. Right, that's git download, and you can actually download it here for Windows, and you can choose your version, which is going to be most probably 64-bit and Git for Windows setup, or you can use the portable version. And as you're using Windows, you can use the winged command or choco, or whatever. So let's actually test this out. Curl localhost port 8000 to-dos. That's still an empty to-dos list. Are we sure that we have saved? So just make sure to hit Ctrl S to save the changes. And let's get back to our git bash. Let's run that again. And there we go. Indeed, it was not saved. So if everything is working fine on your end, you should see all of the to-dos inside your to-dos list. Awesome. So that's just the first step to make sure that the GET request is working fine on FastAPI. And now it's time to work with HTMX a little bit. So let's get back to our index.html file that we've created, and just modify this a little bit. Instead of document, we can say full stack app HTMX plus FastAPI. Right, and of course, if you will run that with live server, right, you should see the changes here. That's just the template. But if you will refresh the page, you should see also everything has properly changed. That's through the server. not just the Open Live server, the HTML that's being rendered. FastAPI, right? And that's HTMX, sorry. Right, refresh that, and we have here everything is properly rendered. Sweet. So let's work a little bit with HTMX code. So in order to be able to work with HTMX, I need a script tag here. So the script here is, as you can see, that it was actually suggested by tab 9. That's actually the correct one, or not the correct one. We can check that out. I'm going to leave the link in the description below. You can check it out later, but we can check out down here. We have that script https unpackage.com htmx.org 2.00 dist htmx.min.js, and I believe it's the same. Good job, tab 9. Actually, that's the same one. All right, that's the minified one. Let's use it, but yeah. Good job, tab 9. Right, so this is essential for your HTML file because you will need those hyperscript attributes. As we said, those attributes are going to permit you to make HTTP requests without actually writing any JavaScript code, which is crazy. We're going to see that in a minute. So inside the body, and instead of that hello world, we can actually change hello world to write something like Fullstack app using HTMX and FastAPI. And inside the body, you will need to have an unordered list. So that's going to be the list that will populate all of your to-dos. So you would do UL, and let's create an ID for that. I'm going to call it to-dos, right? And here I'm going to use those attributes. And the first attribute, that's going to be a hyperscript for get request. So hx-get, and here I'm going to pass the route to the to-dos actually, which is crazy. So again, guys, the hx-get attribute is part of HTMX, and it specifies the HTTP GET request. Right? It's going to go to the to-dos endpoint and fetches all of the to-dos inside the to-dos list. And we will need to have this event triggered. That's why I have to use another attribute called hx-trigger, and that's set to load. So this attribute basically specifies when the request is triggered. All right, the value load here means that the GET request to the to-dos endpoint will be sent when the page is loaded without any user interaction. So that means that whenever you will load the page, all of the to-dos items are going to be displayed and rendered to the web browser. But we actually need the contents. So the contents here are going to be from inner HTML, and that's where hx-swap comes to play. So hyperscript swap is set to be equal to inner HTML. That simply means that this attribute defines how the response from the server should replace the current content of the element. And inner HTML here simply means that the content inside our unordered list, that's going to be completely replaced by the response from the to-dos endpoint from FastAPI. All right, so that's how things work between HTMX and FastAPI, guys. Right? I hope things make sense to you. If not, and if anything is unclear to you, please let me know in the comments below, and I'll make sure to respond as fast as I can. All right, one more thing that I want to create in the templates folder is a file called to-dos. So todos.html. So here mainly what I want to do is to iterate over the to-dos. So I will say for to-do in to-dos, and don't forget to wrap that in curly braces, and of course ampersand. That's the same in Django template language or Jinja or Jinja 2. That's exactly the same. So we're iterating over the to-dos items, and let's create a list, and inside the list I'm going to have the to-do.text, whatever the to-do is going to be, and we're going to render the text or the content of that to-do. Also, don't forget to wrap that in double curly braces like that. And also don't forget to close the for loop. So to close the for loop, you type end for, also wrapped in curly braces and ampersand. Right? Don't do like this. That's not going to work. The ampersand should be attached to the curly brace in opening and closing. Awesome. So let's save that. Let's get back to our main.py file. So the final thing that I want to do here is to connect the to-dos endpoint to work with HTMX. And this means that when the front end, when your HTML file is going to send the special request or the hyperscript or HX request, the server will return HTML instead of JSON data. And this makes the UI dynamic without reloading the whole page, as I've told you in the introduction of this video. So what we would want to do here is to change a little bit in that route or in that decorator. This line is going to be the same at app.getToDos response class equal to HTML response. But what I want to change here is that I want to embed or insert the HX request inside the list to-dos. So request is going to be set to request, no problem. And also here I want HX request to be equal to annotated union, and I'm going to explain that in a minute, stir and none as second argument, and also the header. And all that is equal to none. So what I've done actually here in those few words that I've just added is that I have checked if the request is coming from HTMX. And how so? By looking for that HX request header in the incoming request. And if I will find that there is indeed an HX request in the header, I will know that HTMX made the request. If this is going to be missing, that means that there is no HTMX request. All right, so let's get back to our asynchronous function. So I want to check out if HX underscore request is true. In this case, I want to return templates.templateResponse, and I'm going to set the request equal to the request with the name of the to-dos file, of course, todos.html, and the context of to-dos equal to the to-dos, whatever the to-dos are inside the to-dos list. So I'm going to return templates.templateResponse, and let's just make like that. All right. And here I want the request to be equal to the actual request. The name here is to-dos, right? todos.html, and also for the context, I want here the to-dos to be set to the value of that key is the actual to-dos. All right, and I don't know what's just happening here. Okay. All right, so that's the basic architecture of our asynchronous function list to-dos. And again, we're going to leave that as it is. We're going to fall back to JSON. And that simply means that if the request is not from HTMX, the server falls back to sending the to-dos data as JSON and not as HTML. And this is very useful for API clients, by the way, or other applications that consuming that endpoint. All right, awesome. So let's get back to our web browser, and there we go. Full stack app using HTMX and FastAPI, the same way that we have did it in our HTML file. And inside here we have the test, as we have put it here in HTML, in index.html. We've put here our to-dos, and into to-dos we have here to-do.text, and that's because we have here in our class, we have here in the to-dos, we have text equal to test. If you will change this, you will say to-do number 1. We're going to save that, get back here, refresh, you will have here to-do number 1. All right, hopefully everything makes sense to you guys. And yeah, with that, let's move on. I wanted to add some styling to the page, so I can use Simple CSS, by the way. right? That's going to be very easy to use, going to stylize the page and not being dull, white dull like that. So let me just click here on Get Started with Simple CSS, and I'm going to take the minified version. So I'm going to take that here. I'm going to add that in my index.html. Let's just do like that, right? Let's save that. Let's get back here to our page. If you will refresh, you'll see that it has a little bit of styling, dark background color, different fonts, and so on. All right, so let's get back to our VS Code to add more CRUD operations in our FastAPI or Python file. So that's the main class, all right? So what I want to do is that I want to add more CRUD operations. I have here get, but we need to do post, put, and delete. So I'm going to start with post to-dos. So now you're able to do the basic of listing to-dos. So now let's go ahead and start creating a to-do. All right, so I'm going to have another decorator with post verb. And inside here, that's going to go to the to-dos route or endpoint. And the response class here is equal to HTML response. And here again, that's going to be an asynchronous function called create to do. And here the request is set to be equal to the actual request. So to do is equal to annotated. And I want to append to the to-dos list each to-do that's going to be added. So to-dos.append, and I want to append the to-do class inside here each individual to-do. And return the template response. Template response. And that's going to be exactly the same thing. Request name to-dos.html and the context, which is set basically to the to-dos list itself with all of the to-dos inside. All right, so what I want to do now in my index.html is I want to create a form. This form is going to dynamically interact with the server using HTMX. And once submitted, it's going to send a post request to the to-dos endpoint. It's going to update the list of to-dos on the page without reloading. Additionally, it's going to clear the form fields after the request is complete. So the way to do that is to create just simply a form. But this form is going to have some HTMX attributes inside. So we will not have any action here. Let me just delete that. And I'm going to have hx post equal to /to-dos. Also, I want to have hx target equal to the ID of to-dos. Also, I want hx swap like we have done with the UL, and that's going to be also equal to inner HTML. By the way, let's just put the form above the UL. Also, I will have hx on set to HTMX after request is equal to this.reset. And of course, inside that form, I will have an input field and a button. Right, so let's just make like that, and I'm going to change that in a bit, but I want to explain to you more what are those hx or hyperscript attributes. Let's start by the hx post equal to to-dos. So this what it does, basically it makes the form send all the data to the server's to-dos endpoint using that HTTP post request. And the form does not reload the page. Instead, it sends the data in the background via HTMX, which is again a great feature of HTMX in terms of user experience. Next, we have the hx target equal to to-dos. So here this tells HTMX where to place the server's response. And the response is going to update the content of the element of that to-do item with the ID to-dos here, right? Which is basically inside our unordered list here. We have talked already about hx swap inner HTML. Now hx on HTMX after request this.reset, it's triggered after the request to the to-dos endpoint is completed. And by the way, this dot reset here, this actually resets the form fields. So it clears the input in the input field after submission. So also that's part of the user experience, because you don't want to delete yourself or to delete manually. Every time you will hit the button to submit, that's going to clear the input field. Right, so we will have an input text. By the way, I'll have only one button. So just delete that, all right. So that input field of type text, that's right, and name here is to do. And placeholder, let's make something like I want to, and we'll keep it like that. And the button, you need to just remove the type here, submit, and just add to do, that's fine. All right, let's get back to our page. Let's do F5, and there we go. To click on add to do, none. So we don't need to hard code anything anymore in main.py. Let's just get back to our to-dos. Let's just delete this to-do. Just make it like that. Awesome. So let's check that out. Read a book. Add to-do, none. I think there is some error in the post request maybe. So let's review that together. To do is set to annotated stir form. That should be form, not yeah, and then we have to do is append. All right, so all of that we can, because I've actually left it to tab 9, which is a mistake, and we have here form, and there is no union, just like that. All right, let's do Control S. Let's get back here. Let's refresh. Again, let's do read a book. Add to do. Awesome. So we have here read a book as a to do. All right, so let's work on more CRUD operations, because we need now the toggling for done or not done and deleting the to-dos. But before we do that, let's add the ability to edit the to-do text itself. So here you will have the ability to change that. So read a book and a magazine, for example, or write an essay, or drink a coffee, or whatever. We can change the actual text. So that's going to be at app.put, going to the to-dos endpoint, and always with put and delete, we need to target a specific to-do by its unique identifier. So we need to add a new route, which is the to-do underscore ID, whatever the ID of that to-do is. The same thing as we have done before, response class HTML response, and the method itself is, or the function itself is going to be called update to do. The request is equal to request, and actually that's text is set to annotated stir form. Awesome. Now what I want to do is I want to loop over the to-dos. So in order to loop over with two different iterators, I will need to use enumerate method. So for index and to do in enumerate, and I'm going to, oops. So for index and to do in enumerate, and passing inside the to-dos, I'm going to check out if the to-do.id, but don't forget to convert that to stir, and that's if that's equal to the to-do ID. In that case, I will set the to-do.text equal to the text that I'm writing. So I'm actually updating the to-do text to the actual text that I'm writing. And in that case, I want to break out of the loop. Then I'm going to return the template. That's exactly the same thing that we have done above. Return templates.template response with the todos.html template. All right, that's good. All right, awesome, but that's not enough because I need to update my todos.html file. So I want to have a similar pattern to create a to-do. So instead of just putting inside the to-do.text, I will need to have an input field. That input field will have a name of text and will have a value of that to-do.txt. And also I will have a hyperscript attribute, which is put. So that's going to modify. You see how these attributes are awesome. hx-put. And what we want to modify, to the following, route. So the to-dos endpoint / and the to-do dot ID, whatever the ID of that to-do item that we want to modify is. And also I want to mention the to-dos ID. So that's the hx-target equal to to-dos. That's the to-dos ID. We need to swap that for the actual content of the HTML, the inner HTML. So I'll need to have hx-swap is equal to inner HTML. And the trigger for that event is key up. Whenever you will just start to type, that's going to trigger that event. So hx-trigger equal to key up. And we'll have another value which is changed, and another one for a delay of 250 milliseconds. So that's exactly the same way we have created a to-do, except that we are using this hx-target attribute to respond to key up and change events. And also we have added this 250 milliseconds, this actually to debounce the input basically. It's going to wait a moment before sending the request. And one cool thing here, by the way, before we move on, that's unlike a form tag, there is no need to call reset, because the content gets replaced automatically with the updated version. So if it's, for example, drink coffee, if you're going to write, for example, read a book, that's going to automatically change. You don't have to call for a reset method that's going to replace the text that you have written automatically with the that's going to replace the text that's going to replace the previously written text with the updated version. All right, so now that editing to-dos is sorted, let me just tackle the rest. Let's go to main.py again, and let's move on with app.put. Let's tackle that. Marking to-dos is done, and deleting a to-do as well, and we'll be good with this tutorial. So let me just refresh the page. Let's write here drinking a coffee, add to do, and you can see that this is actually an input field. So if you want to substitute the drinking coffee, you can definitely do that. So reading a book instead. Let's get back to our code and let's work on marking that to do as done. So don't be confused, because that's update to do. We want toggle to do, toggle between done and undone. So let's create another app.post, going to the to-dos / to-do.id, and we will have another route which is toggle, and here again the response class is equal to the HTML response. And we'll have another function. I'm gonna call it toggle to do. That's taking the request which is set to the actual request, and the to-do ID is set to string. And I'm going to again iterate over the index and the to-do in the to-dos, enumerate to-dos, and I'm going to check out if the stir to-do ID is equal to the to-do ID, the same thing that we have done. In that case, instead of to-do.done, with the sub-index of that exact to-do is equal to not to-dos, again with the sub-index .done. So simply what we have done again is that we have listened to a post request at that to-dos endpoint here with the to-do ID toggle. Next, we want to find the to-do with the matching to-do ID. And then we are flipping its done status. So if it's true, it's going to be false. And if it's false, it's going to be true. And that exactly is on this line. To-dos index.done is equal to not to-dos index.done. So we are flipping the status of the done. And finally, we are rendering, of course, and returning the updated to-dos list in the to-dos HTML template. All right, awesome. So we are approaching the end of that tutorial, but and before we move on to the delete operation, let's get back to our todos.html file here, and let's change a little bit. So we're going to leave the input as it is, but we want to add two more inputs, one for the checkbox and one for the button. So I'm going to have again an input, and instead of having a text type, I'm going to have it as checkbox. Then I want to have a condition, if todo.done, and here is going to be checked is equal to, is equal to true. And let's shut the end if, so have to ampersand and end if, like that. Maybe if I would do it just for better representation. In that case, I'm going to use the hx post. I'm going again to go to that to-dos endpoint with the todo.id, and we're not finished because we want to go to the toggle route as well, and the target is equal to the to-dos ID. And finally, I want the swap for the inner HTML. All right, so that's the first checkbox. So I just refresh, add to do, and there we go. You see, toggling. Awesome. So that's as far as the modification, whether this to-do item is done or not done. We're going to get back in a moment to todos.html to just write the button to delete that item, which is essentially something like this. So I'm not going to write it now. Let's get back to main.py first, and let's add the final route to delete a to-do item. So that's going to be the last post. It's going to basically going to be very, very similar to editing or updating a to-do item. So again, the to-dos endpoint with the to-do ID, and instead of the toggle, we're going to delete that to-do item. And let's change the name of that function. Let's call it delete to-do. And for the request, that's going to be the same with the to-do ID. That's going to be stir as well. And we're going to iterate over the to-dos list. And we're going to check out if stir todo.id is equal to todo_id. And instead of toggling, we're going to delete totally. So I'm going to do del or del to delete to-dos with the sub index or sub item of that to-dos list. And again, I'm going to break out and I'm going to render everything to the browser. Awesome. So let's do Control S. Let's get back to our todos.html and let's add here the last one. So let's have another input. So input here, let's just actually copy that. Now the input will have a button type and not a checkbox. And I'm going to have a value, so I'm not going to check. And we're going to get a value, so I'm not going to check anything. Simply, I'm going to have a value, and that value is, you can do like this. You can actually, let me copy the X here, this one right here, right? So that's the deleting. And again, we're going to send that HTMX post request. Instead of toggle, we're going to delete. And the target, that's going to be the same with the to-dos ID and also the hx swap with the inner HTML. Now the last input field, that's going to be of a type button instead of text. The value is going to be equal to X, let's say, just to click on that button and it's going to delete that to-do item. Also the HTMX post request, that's equal to that route. So we're going to the to-dos endpoint, we're going to the todos.id, and also we want to have a route. That route is delete and not toggle. And also we have the hx target, that's equal to the to-dos ID, so equal to, also we have the target and also the swap. That's exactly the same thing that we have been doing the whole application actually. All right, I think there is something not quite right here because I forgot the equal sign and I've added that parentheses, so we don't need any parentheses here. And that's basically everything. Be careful, that's todo.id, not todos.id. You're free to, you can choose basically any other emojis. So emojis, maybe, I don't know, we can find, we can type here false or delete maybe. False. Oops, okay. Maybe cancel. All right, awesome. So let's take that. Let's actually copy this. Let's paste it here. So let's get back to our application. Let me just refresh the page and let's try to add a to-do. So let's say, for instance, bake a cake, add to-do. Awesome. Here, that's toggle. By the way, I wanted to have this strike through line, but we can work on that in a minute. If I will do like this, that's going to delete everything. So let's say shopping, let's say studying for an hour, let's say jogging, let's say drinking a coffee also. Okay, so these are our to-do items. You can see now the interaction between HTMX sending HTMX requests to get, post, put, and delete, and interacting with the backend with FastAPI essentially. You can substitute FastAPI with Django, with Express, with Laravel, with any backend framework. It's going to work just fine. By the way, I want to have this strike through when I toggle. So that's fine, this is done, okay. You can delete it, but I want this also to give me a sign for, user interface and user experience as well, just to, it can be stressing me out. I don't want to see that item with that, okay, tick, but it's still open so I can actually modify whatever. I don't want that. So let's maybe change in to-dos here. Let's change here a little bit. The HX put, we're going to leave that, and here I'm going to check out, do like this, and I'm going to check out if to-do.done, and here we'll have a style. The style here is text decoration, so text decoration, and the text decoration here I want it to be dashed. Let's have this line through, right? Let's have line through, and disabled is set to true, and let's have another end F. All right, sweet. So let's try that out. If we'll do like this, oh, fantastic. You see, that's much better. That's much better. You still can delete that, right? You still can change everything, right? Make my homework. That's done, undone, delete. So yeah, there you go, guys. Hope this quick introduction to HTMX and how it can work with any backend framework was useful to you. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them down in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you're not already, and I will see you in the next video. Till then, stay safe and be well. See you later, guys.